The lights go out. Most people wait. Someone looks out the window. The neighbors are dark too. Someone says, "It'll probably be back in an hour." That's how most long power outages begin. Not with panic. With optimism. People assume it's temporary. They check their phone. Maybe light a candle. Perhaps laugh about it for a few minutes. Then an hour passes. Nothing. 2 hours. Still nothing. The refrigerator hasn't been opened much yet. The freezer is still cold. Phones still have plenty of battery. Everything feels manageable. That's exactly why the first mistakes happen. Not because people don't know what to do. Because they don't realize the outage is becoming something much bigger. By the time they understand, some mistakes can't be undone. The first mistake is opening the refrigerator too often. It seems harmless. You just want to check. Is everything still cold? Maybe grab another drink. See how the milk looks. Open. Close. Open again. Each time the door opens, cold air spills out and warmer air enters. The refrigerator now has to remove that extra heat. Except it can't. There's no electricity. People often don't realize that a closed refrigerator can stay safely cold for several hours, while a full freezer can keep food frozen much longer if left unopened. Every unnecessary trip to the refrigerator quietly shortens that time. That's why experienced households decide what they need before opening the door. One visit. Everything at once. Then the door stays shut. It's a tiny habit. But over several days, it makes an enormous difference. The second mistake is assuming phone batteries will last. Most people start using their phones more during a blackout. Checking the power company's website. Refreshing social media. Watching videos. Reading local news. Calling family. Using the flashlight. Every activity quietly drains the battery. Then another mistake follows. People don't reduce usage until the battery is already below 20%. By then it's often too late. A phone isn't just entertainment during a long outage. It's communication. Weather updates. Emergency information. Maps. Camera. Payment methods in some situations. That's why experienced households treat battery life differently. Brightness goes down. Unnecessary apps close. Videos wait. The phone becomes a tool rather than a toy. Every percentage suddenly matters. The third mistake is forgetting about water. This surprises many people. The power went out. Not the water. Right? Sometimes. Not always. Some homes rely on private wells with electric pumps. Apartment buildings may use electrically powered booster systems. Municipal systems generally continue operating, but outages can affect water treatment or pumping in certain situations. Even when water continues flowing, people often underestimate how much they use. Flushing toilets. Washing hands. Making coffee. Cooking pasta. Cleaning dishes. Water disappears one small task at a time. That's why experienced households fill containers early if they believe an outage may last. Not because they're expecting the worst. Because storing water before it becomes difficult is much easier than after. The fourth mistake is using every flashlight immediately. Imagine the first evening. Every room gets its own flashlight. Children play with them. Someone leaves one switched on while looking for something. Another disappears under a blanket. The batteries begin draining before they're truly needed. Good lighting isn't just about seeing. It's about planning. One light for the room people are using. Another kept in reserve. Headlamps often outperform flashlights because they leave both hands free. Small decisions like these stretch batteries much further than people expect. The fifth mistake is ignoring the weather. When the power goes out during summer, people worry about food. When it goes out during winter, they worry about heat. Both are understandable. But weather changes constantly. A cool afternoon may become a freezing night. A comfortable evening may become a dangerously hot afternoon. Experienced households pay attention to forecasts early while phones still have plenty of battery. Knowing tomorrow's weather influences almost every decision. Whether to conserve blankets. Whether to cook frozen food immediately. Whether to prepare for extreme heat. Information is often one of the most valuable resources during a prolonged outage. The sixth mistake is waiting too long to charge essential devices. Imagine someone owns a power bank. Great. Except they don't use it. They assume they'll save it for later. Later arrives. Now both the phone and the power bank are nearly empty. The better approach is usually keeping essential devices topped up while power remains available from backup sources. A partially charged phone connected to a full power bank is far more useful than two nearly empty devices. Planning beats reacting every time. The seventh mistake is wasting ice. People immediately fill coolers. Pour drinks over ice. Use handfuls for convenience. Ice disappears surprisingly fast. The interesting thing about ice isn't simply that it melts. It's that every piece represents stored cooling. Used wisely, it keeps medicine cold. Preserves food. Maintains safe temperatures inside coolers. Used carelessly, it simply becomes another glass of cold water. That's why experienced households often think carefully before breaking open the freezer. Because once the ice melts, it doesn't come back until the electricity does. By now you've probably noticed something. None of these mistakes involve expensive equipment. Nobody needed a 1,000-pound generator to avoid them. They simply required thinking a few hours ahead instead of a few minutes ahead. That's the biggest difference between households that cope well during long outages and households that quickly become overwhelmed. The first group starts adapting immediately. The second keeps waiting for normal life to return. And while they're waiting, the next 5 mistakes quietly begin creating even bigger problems. One of the strangest things about a long power outage is how quickly people's priorities change. During the first hour, they're annoyed. After several hours, they're inconvenienced. By the second day, they begin thinking differently. Not because the outage changed. Because they did. The small comforts they barely noticed yesterday suddenly become incredibly valuable. Light. Hot food. Running appliances. A charged phone. Cold drinking water. The longer the outage lasts, the more every decision begins to matter. And that's exactly where the next mistakes appear. Not because people panic. Because they continue behaving as if tomorrow will be completely normal. The 8th mistake is cooking the wrong food first. Most people immediately look at the freezer. They see frozen pizzas. Frozen meat. Ice cream. Vegetables. Their first thought is usually, we need to cook everything before it goes bad. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it creates another problem. Cooking one large frozen roast on the first day might sound sensible. But now you've created several days' worth of leftovers. Without reliable refrigeration. Instead, experienced households often think strategically. What will spoil first? What can realistically be eaten today? What requires the least fuel? What creates the least waste? Those questions often lead to very different meals. A frozen pizza may make sense. A huge turkey probably doesn't. Good planning isn't about saving every item. It's about losing as little as possible. The 9th mistake is using candles carelessly. Candles feel comforting. The soft light makes a dark room feel almost normal. That's why millions of people reach for them during blackouts. But candles also introduce an entirely new hazard. One distracted moment. One pet brushing past a table. One child reaching for something. One curtain moving in an open window. Suddenly the situation becomes far more serious than a power outage. That's why many emergency planners recommend battery-powered lanterns or LED lights whenever possible. Candles still have their place. But they should never be left unattended. And they should always be placed on stable, non-flammable surfaces well away from anything that can catch fire. The irony is striking. People lose electricity. Then accidentally create a much bigger emergency trying to replace it. The 10th mistake is forgetting about the freezer. Most people focus on the refrigerator because they use it every day. The freezer quietly sits in the background. Until several days pass. Now people start wondering, is everything still frozen? They open the lid. Check. Close it. Then check again an hour later. Every time the freezer opens, cold air escapes. If the freezer was full and remained closed, it could have stayed cold much longer. But repeated checking changes that. One useful trick many people overlook is placing a thermometer inside before problems ever occur. Then you don't have to keep opening the door to guess what's happening. Another simple habit is grouping frozen food together. Large frozen masses retain cold longer than individual items spread throughout the freezer. Small details. Big difference. The 11th mistake is assuming neighbors don't need help. Long outages reveal something interesting about communities. Most people stay inside. They assume everyone else is managing. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they aren't. An elderly neighbor may rely on electrically powered medical equipment. Someone living alone may simply appreciate knowing another person checked in. Families with young children may be struggling more than they appear. Preparedness has never been only about supplies. It's also about people. Historically, communities survived difficult periods by sharing information, sharing tools, sharing meals, sometimes simply checking that everyone was safe. That habit remains just as valuable today. One conversation can identify a problem before it becomes an emergency. The 12th and final mistake is believing the outage will end before preparation matters. This is probably the biggest mistake of all, because it influences every other decision. People delay filling water containers, delay charging power banks, delay checking batteries, delay planning meals, delay finding blankets, delay locating flashlights. Every delay comes from the same thought. It'll probably be back soon. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it isn't. The smartest households don't assume the outage will last forever. They simply prepare as though it might. If power returns in 2 hours, wonderful. Nothing was lost. If it returns in 2 days, they're already ahead. That's the real lesson. Preparation isn't pessimism. It's flexibility. Now let's step back and look at the entire list. Opening the refrigerator too often. Draining phone batteries. Ignoring water. Wasting flashlight batteries. Forgetting the weather. Waiting too long to charge devices. Using ice carelessly. Cooking the wrong foods first. Using candles unsafely. Repeatedly opening the freezer. Forgetting about neighbors. Assuming power will return before preparation matters. Notice something? None of these mistakes require expensive equipment to avoid. No generator. No solar panels. No elaborate emergency bunker. Most require nothing more than changing the way you think. That's why experienced households often seem calmer. Not because they own dramatically more supplies. Because they've already made the important decisions. They know which flashlight they'll use. They know where the batteries are. They know how they'll cook. They know which food gets eaten first. They've removed uncertainty. And uncertainty is exhausting. Think about the first few hours of any disruption. People spend enormous amounts of mental energy asking questions. What should we do? What if it lasts longer? Should we save this? Should we use that? Every unanswered question creates stress. Prepared households already answered most of those questions weeks or months earlier. That's a huge advantage. One of the most overlooked benefits of preparation isn't having extra supplies. It's reducing decision fatigue. The fewer decisions you have to make under pressure, the better those decisions usually become. There's another lesson hidden inside every long power outage. People often discover they depended on electricity in ways they never realized. Not just for lights. For cooking, entertainment, communication, comfort, shopping, banking, even opening garage doors. Electricity quietly supports hundreds of daily routines. Most of the time we never notice. Until it disappears. That's why long outages are so revealing. They don't just test equipment. They test habits. Some habits help. Some don't. The good news is that almost every mistake on this list is easy to fix before the next outage ever happens. Buy another flashlight. Keep batteries together. Know where your blankets are. Store a little extra water. Have a simple meal plan. Charge power banks regularly. Check on neighbors. These aren't dramatic changes. They're ordinary habits. And ordinary habits quietly become extraordinary advantages when normal life suddenly pauses. Perhaps that's the biggest takeaway from this entire video. Long power outages aren't usually won by owning the most equipment. They're won by making fewer mistakes. Because every mistake costs something. Time. Battery life. Food. Water. Fuel. Or peace of mind. Avoid enough of those mistakes. And the outage becomes something completely different. Not easy. but far more manageable. And that's exactly why the first mistakes matter so much. Not because they're the biggest. Because they're the ones that quietly determine everything that happens next.